pase, pierna derecha, directo al arco, ¡golazo! ¡Golazo!
The world of football with a soccer perspective. This is Soccer Today with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee, live on the Sports Podcasting Network.
And good day, good night. Welcome to Soccer Today for Tuesday, October 24th. I'm all messed up, Duane. Today, it's the last show in the present studio. It's the last day here in my old apartment, moving in a new studio and a new apartment in the next few days. Duane, I have to say, this place is now all empty, only my equipment left. And I've been reminiscing this morning about the 1,500 plus shows that I've did from here.
15, wow, yeah. The Laval Comets no more. You're moving to Montreal, right?
Be a downtown Montreal Comets, but it'll be better for everything, especially for the convenience of being closer to any sporting event, except the Laval Rockets, which I was basically next door. I was neighbor to the Laval Rockets, but the only sad part is, Duane, unfortunately, I didn't want to do this on the show, but it's like my last resort. I have 2 cats and I need to find a new home, and I wasn't able to find a home anywhere for them over the last few months, and my last resort is talking to the listeners. I have 2 beautiful, very nice cats, 12 and 8-year-old, and if you're in the Montreal region or just want to drive here, cats will be I'm looking for a home for them so they can finish their cat life in a nice fashion and not having me to bring them to a shelter, basically.
Yeah, please, someone take Kevin's cats. Anyway, yeah, I'd take them, but I live in a zoo right now, as anyone who knows me knows. There's like 17 animals here.
Yeah,
but
and I don't think they'll play well with the zebra, So
exactly, yeah. No, I truly do live in a zoo. Anyway, yeah, let's talk about soccer. Of course, yesterday we finished the show, and I go on Twitter, and of course.
Oh.
Montreal decides to fire their coach again.
But it was expected, and there was some truth to the rumors. Let's just put it this way: this was the best and most transparent and honest press conference I've ever seen Joey Saputo have. Things we talk about this on this show, Duane. I heard from Joey Saputo. Like, one example during the press conference, he was talking about how in Major League Soccer, you got a salary cap, and you got 3 DPs for everyone. This is not where you can get an advantage. He's like, now it's with the academy, and it's with coaches. And our next coach is going to be, he didn't mention it, but Martino in Atlanta changed the game and how ownership as well views the coaching hires they do. And it is true now, and it is a commitment by Saputo. He mentioned the salary of the next coach is something added to next year's budget, right? It wasn't budgeted for, and Saputo's willing to fork out the money to get a quality hire, like a 5-year experience in the top flight somewhere around the world type of quality, like a Martino, basically, which is kind of like the new fancy blueprint that ownership like to do, that they can use their money in an advantage where they're not capped and it's not a salary cap. And so that's one of the things Saputo talked about yesterday, and I was actually surprised that this is the reasoning behind the change of coaching staff, is that aspect, to get a coaching staff that will help get the most out of the investment that they're doing on the players. And that's what we talked about in a salary cap league, where you have a Nacho Piatti or Didier Drogba for a finite amount of time. You need a coach that will get you the most amount of juice when you squeeze that fruit during that time period. And did Mauro Biello do that? No. And the way Saputo mentioned it was really objective. And I was quite impressed by Joey Saputo's press conference and how transparent it is. Yes, it's another coaching change, the 4th in 6 years, but this time around it's not just basically just a personality conflict or a difference of opinion. It's maybe the beginning of an actual, I don't want to say identity plan for the team, but a realization that what we have been doing thus far has not been good enough.
It's a funny thing that when you've made a lot of coaching changes, because I think anyone understands the idea that stability is vital in MLS. It really is. And I think here in Toronto, we've understood that over the last few years with Greg Vanney. But at the same time, if it's the wrong guy in charge, you do have to make the change. So my question to you is, was he the wrong guy in charge? Because, I mean, from an outside perspective, a slightly outside perspective that I have, I wasn't convinced that coaching was the problem in Montreal this year. I thought it might have been talent, but
Yeah, but apparently something we learned yesterday, Duane, and well, yes, Moriello was made to be the scapegoat, was put to the sword in some ways, because we learned yesterday that he was the one that was responsible for the roster changes or lack thereof. The way we were explained yesterday, at least, I don't know the veracity of those comments, and I'm not there. Nobody is there behind the scenes except the people implicated to verify those statements. But Joey Saputo mentioning that how it works is Mauro Biello doing his shopping list, his grocery list, who he wants, what he wants, who he doesn't want, whatever he wants, and he had carte blanche. He had no, basically. I don't know that expression is in English, but he had carte blanche. You know what I mean. So having a blank check, he gives his list to Adam Braz, and Adam Braz takes the list, sees what he can do compared to the cap, and sees what he can do with TAM and GAM and all those tools that MLS roster or MLS clubs have to make the roster, and then pass it on some list to Nick DeSantis, who is the international negotiator. So technically that's how it works. So the lack of off-season move last off-season is not impeded on Adam Braz like it was explained yesterday, but it was more Biello's fault apparently, because he didn't necessarily get the players he wanted or re-sign the right players. But we'll see. It's hard to see if that's actually how it works, and it seems maybe different than what we anticipated. Yes, Dwayne. But yeah, so the coaching change of the Montreal Impact is, for me this time around, at least done with the idea of getting the right coach next time around.
No, fair enough. Sorry, I was on mute there. I did my mute thing again. Someone has to. I need someone to come into my studio to make sure that I don't mute the button at the wrong time. But Kevin, yeah, where do you go from here? That's the question I have. I mean, I know who I'd hire. But I'm not sure whether that relationship has been healed yet. But what kind of coach do you think that the Impact should look for next time?
A international coach that has a lot of experience. There's about 30 criteria that Joey Saputo mentioned he has on his list. And the talk started last July, actually, with his European contact, Bologna staff as well. They've looked for what the possibility of the coaches that are out there that have that type of experience. We're talking about 5 years experience in the top flight, so in Ligue 1, in Premier League, or other leagues like those ones. Talk about 5 years. Italian coach, French coach. There's one or two names that started to come out. Patrick Leduc of RDS mentioned earlier today on social media that Rémi Gard, the French coach who was with OL and in the Premier League as well, could be a possibility. We're talking about big names, or at least not necessarily big names, but coaching with a lot of experience, with a pedigree of top flight experience or international experience, dealing with big players, having a player network as well that can bring in the right player, having the experience of dealing with an academy, because that's one thing Joey Saputo was really hard on, is the continuation of the academy being important in how Montreal produces players, how producing an identity of play, and they want a coach or a manager that is used to dealing with the academy as well. And one thing I want to make sure too that the listener knows, what Joey Saputo mentioned yesterday, yes, there's some people in place in the academy, with the director of the academy, Philippe Lafroy, but he's leaving, again, carte blanche to the next guy coming in, wanting him to analyze how they do stuff at the Montreal Impact and maybe put the corrections where corrections are needed, and maybe put his own people where he thinks they should be. So there might be other changes in the next future. Mauro Biello might be part of maybe a office job or something else. That's one thing that was mentioned yesterday, but it's too early to tell now. For sure, it's the next manager who is going to have a lot of decision and analyzing to do in his first few weeks.
Well, Biello, we haven't heard from him yet, obviously. I
don't think we will. Like, it seemed bookended to me. Like, the way it was done actually the most classiest probably of the all. The Montreal Impact. Yeah, of the whole bunch, And it was kind of not necessarily expected, but we all heard the rumors. And I don't think the coaching staff lives under that big of a rock that they didn't hear those rumors. So maybe everyone was expecting it a bit. So we'll see if there's how long it takes. But there's been discussion over the last few months by Joey Saputo already. Like, lines have been cast. We'll just see if he finds a coach somewhere in that ocean.
No, I actually think that that they knew this a few weeks ago, that they were told this a few weeks ago, but based on the way that this happened, it was so instant, it was so immediate that it makes me think that this decision had been made for a few weeks. Obviously, look, I feel for Bill. I don't. If he was in charge of the roster, then yes, that is on him. I'm not completely convinced that this was the right move, but maybe it was if you can get the right guy to come in after. The Impact did underachieve this year for sure, based on what that roster was and what we saw going into this season. I think that there is no doubt that it has to be a disappointing season for the Impact, and here we are. Hopefully, it isn't like some academy assistant coach for Bologna that comes in to be the head coach next year, because I think we'd all have some questions about that. And if they can make the right move, then hey.
Apparently, if everything that Joey Saputo said yesterday, if 50% of it comes true, it's already a step in the right direction. I think the words being used and the realization that maybe how we have done things so far, well, wasn't as good as we thought it was. And we might need to think a different way going forward at all level, everything being open and questioned. And I think it might be that right time for that. And I think maybe the reasoning behind this coaching move makes a lot of sense. And it's unfortunate as well that it's imagine Morbiello, a legend of this club, the Patrice Bernier before MLS kind of career for the Montreal Impact, even longer. But because it wasn't under the bright lights of Major League Soccer, we don't remember it as fondly. But Mauro Biello, a legend of this club. Same for Nick DeSantis as well, by the way, legends of the Montreal Impact. So hopefully everything falls into place and Montreal gets that big name, or at least the big experienced coach like it's looking for. And in the future, stability hopefully comes after this one. There was some level of stability with Biello, though. He stayed in for almost 2 years, almost fully 2 years. Well, actually more than that, 2016-17 season fully and part of 15. So you do have that stability, and we've seen some results, but it's the lack of continuity in the last 12 months that cost Mauro Biello his job. The next coaching hire, again, in the words of Joey Saputo, is 30 criteria, like experience, wanting to come to Montreal, wanting to come to MLS, having the open mind to learn how things are done in Major League Soccer, which is sometimes a big deterrent, and as well having either the capability of speaking French or the will to learn. That is one of those criteria as well. So a big list of criteria, maybe a big list of potential coach, and we'll probably have an answer in the next few weeks, if not maybe a month or two.
When I look at the Impact's roster, I think the Impact have done a good job on the high end of the roster. Like Piatti is a great player. They've always done well in the DPs, I think, but where they've struggled in my mind is with, what do we call them? The MLS lifers, right? They don't really have that sort of plumber depth that you need to be successful in this league. In my mind, I think that is their weakness. So I wonder, when you're talking about the recruitment side, whether, you might need to look at Braz as well. You might need to look at someone out there to try and bring someone in to help on that side as well. Because if you just bring an international coach in that sort of understands the top end talent from Europe and can bring the TAM and the DP caliber guys in, you're still going to need to sort of find that rest of the roster, Kevin. But that's
the one thing I'm kind of hoping for is if you get I'm going to use a bad analogy, but it's like when Arsene Wenger came to Arsenal at the beginning. It kind of opened up the French market for this team, and they had a knowledge of French player that this club didn't have before. So put this in perspective and in context and a different scale, yes. But if you have a Rémi Garde from Olympique Lyonnais who comes in, he knows a lot of French players or European players that played in the French league that are in that TAM and GAM, like between number 4 and 11 on your roster type of player that you can get, probably, because of so maybe the new hire of a coach will actually help Montreal build their depth, because it's not just a top end. You have usually, like in your teams, you have a few top ends, but in a team like Olympique Lyonnais, their mid roster players would fit in very well here, and I think that's maybe the optics and the reasoning behind trying to get a quote unquote blue chip coach.
Well, Wenger might need a job soon. You never know.
It might be him or I don't know, someone else. There's people are saying Laurent Blanc. I doubt that's maybe a little too high of a profile. But what's Didier Deschamps doing? You know?
I don't know. I'm attached to this Wenger idea. Wenger in. There you go.
Thanks, Duane. You just want to see us crash and burn. But speaking of crash and burn, Ronald Koeman as well was let go yesterday by Everton. So that's another coaching change on a Monday.
Yeah, look, Everton's strange season they're having. I think we all thought they'd be a little bit better than they are. We thought they'd be challenging for I don't know, not the top obviously, but maybe a little bit higher up the table than they are. So this is a move that probably we should have seen coming. The only thing that surprises me is it's not, the first. Was this the first one in this? No, it's the second one. Obviously, we've got Crystal Palace made their change too, but. Yeah, the things move over. They turn very quickly in the English Premier League. A lot of pressure there, but Everton probably is underachieving, and away we go.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Cristiano Ronaldo as well has won the best player of the 2016-17 season, and quite a classy speech for once. He actually did a mention to Neymar and to Leo, and that was kind of a little chirp at the same time, but it was I remember what I will take from this presentation yesterday, from this gala, this award ceremony, is Buffon taking like 10 minutes to trying to speak English. Good on you, Gianluigi.
He is a legend for sure. Keeper of the year there. Yeah. What are you going to say? I think Ronaldo. We understood Ronaldo was going to win the Player of the Year. He should have. He made incredible accomplishments this year. There's not really any question or debate about who the Player of the Year was. The only debate I really have from yesterday is why FIFA insists on calling it #the-best. What's that about? That seems like something a toddler would have come up with.
It's the new branding, Duane. They're cool. They're with the new, like, it's lit. It's the best,
OG.
Yeah.
Hashtag.
It's woke.
There you go.
It's suede, y'all.
Here's the question I have, and we'll have this debate right now. We all know who the top two players in the world are. This is not even questionable. Who is number 3 right now? That's a more interesting. Is it Neymar?
Neymar. Well, Neymar, I think, is going to be close to Ronaldo soon. But Neymar, yeah.
Yeah, it probably is. It's probably not much of a debate. So who's number 4 then?
That's the question. You have like a big like congestion in the possibilities. You have Coutinho, Suarez, who else? Cavani. You have like who else? Hazard, Kane.
Why not?
Harry Kane is playing pretty well right now. So yeah, who's number 4 in the world? That's a good question.
We should have an award ceremony for number 4 in the world. That'd be kind of fun.
Let's call it the Arsenal Player Trophy, because it's the 4th best.
4th best. The 4th best. Yeah, awesome. No, but Ronaldo, look, he's a difficult guy to beloved if you're not a fan of the clubs that he plays for, because he's just so. And I was actually having this conversation on the weekend with someone. He was a United fan that I know. And I've said, look, even United fans don't beloved Ronaldo because he's just not likable in any real way. And I think
we're all just jealous, though. I think we're just jealous. Don't you?
Exactly.
If I look like him, if I look like him, and if I play like him, and if I had what he has, okay, maybe I'm superficial, a little bit shallow here, but let me indulge for a second. If I was Ronaldo, yeah, I get it now.
It's a man with an 8-pack that plays soccer brilliantly. Yeah, we're probably all just a little bit jealous.
It has like everything that everyone ever wished that he has, and he's like, what, 26?
He seems ageless, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, we're just all jealous.
Bastard.
Damn you.
Bastard. Anyway.
All the same. It's always the same, guys.
All right. He deserved to win Player of the Year. Yeah, he had a good season. He had an okay season, I think.
Not bad. Let's just say last 2 seasons have been pretty. We can put those up there with any season any player ever had.
Fair enough. All right, shall we wrap the show up with talking a little bit about the MLS playoff?
Well, let's take a break, and when we come back,
Okay.
it's our playoff bracket special.
You are listening to Soccer Today. Follow us on Twitter at Soccer Today SPN and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network. You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.
And we're back on Soccer Today. The MLS Cup playoff starts Wednesday night, and being off tomorrow, we're moving the studio, so we won't have internet tomorrow. So no show. We're going to talk about the playoffs and preview them. And Duane, you can actually test your prediction powers and knowledge and insight against ourselves on our league, and you can go to MLSsoccer.com and go to playoff bracket contest, whatever. You'll see it. It's the first thing you see when you get to the website, and just join our league, Soccer Today on SPN. You'll find it. Join it. Come test yourself against our Nostradamus predictions.
Well, precisely. I haven't joined the league yet because I'm apparently incapable of understanding how to do that. But I will do that a little bit later. I did.
You know that little plus? Just look for it. Just press the plus button.
Well, I was on my phone in my defense, and I did it quickly. Anyway, but the question I have, Kevin, is that does the Montreal host here, does he dare to predict chalk and have TFC win the title, or are you going somewhere else?
I'm predicting another heartbreak in Toronto.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
In the final?
In the final, yes.
Oh dear. All right. We're not losing to Vancouver, right?
No. It's even worse. It's another Cascadia team, but at least it might not. It's not the same as last year, but it's another Cascadia team. Fine, I'm saying it. Portland. I'm choosing Portland.
Fair enough. All right. I picked. Spoiler alert. I picked a repeat of last year's final, which I've actually thought was going to happen for most of the year. But I picked TFC to win it 3-0. I think it's going to be a walk, but we'll see.
Let's start with the Eastern knockout round. So we have Chicago and New York. I'm going Chicago.
See, this is the game. I actually picked the Red Bulls in this one, and it's. I just don't trust the Fire right now. I don't. After their great start, and they were Supporter Shield leaders in July. I believe it was early July. Was the last time TFC wasn't on top. The only week of the season that they weren't, and since that point, the Fire have haven't been a tire fire by any means. They've had a great turnaround this year and a great season. I think a lot to build on moving forward, but I'm just not convinced by them. And maybe I'm over convinced by the Red Bulls too. I think that they've underperformed all year, and I would be a little scared of them in these playoffs, but it's winning on the road in a short week in this knockout round is always tough. But I am picking the Red Bulls in that one. There you go.
Now, Atlanta, Columbus. Yes, save the crew. Yes, there's a movement. There's a lot of people, but it's not going to be enough, Duane. Atlanta is going to roll over Columbus.
Columbus is decent. Like they've had a great end of the season. That's not discount what Columbus has done, but for sure Atlanta is a very good team. My only question with Atlanta is how much they played over the last 6 weeks and how much that's going to have that extra game in the middle of the week that they have to do on short rest. And Javinko's goal basically took them from a bye to having to play this game, and that might, in hindsight, be something that they're going to regret a little bit. But they are, in my mind, talent-wise, the second best team in the league. I don't think there's much debate that TFC has proven that they are the most talented team in the team. That doesn't mean they're going to win necessarily, but I think that Atlanta demonstrated for the last part of the year that they do have a lot of talent there and they do have the capability. My only question, again, with them is whether they might not be a little bit worn down, but for sure they are the favorite in this game. And despite Columbus's great finish to this season, I do think Atlanta has enough to get by them in a home playoff game.
Western knockout round. Vancouver, San Jose. Duane, are you picking the upset here?
Well, I do like to troll, right? I do have a reputation to uphold when it comes to Vancouver fans. So obviously, I'm picking the Earthquakes in this one. But no, there's really no excuse for the Whitecaps not to win this. San Jose San Jose doesn't make any sense.
No.
Let's be honest here. Although it was
Minus
very
21
fitting.
goal differential.
Yes, I know. Well, they got one back there, that late goal, and obviously they scored in stoppage time to the Goonies. They came back for a second, and that's going to be the narrative heading into this one. Look, the Whitecaps don't make any sense either. This is a very difficult game to pick in many ways because both of these teams are confusing, but I think the Whitecaps should have enough to get through this if I'm being logical about it, especially playing a team that I think is probably the worst team in the playoffs right now. But hey, the Whitecaps just haven't convinced me all year, and if they win this, good for them. Hell, if they win this, maybe they're going to go all the way. But
Houston, Kansas City. I'm going Houston. And by the way, I'm choosing Vancouver in the other matchup. But Houston, Kansas City. Houston with Cubo Torres, and it's been a while we haven't heard from those great players, but I feel this time around in the playoff, Houston might be back to their former glory. Just find a way to get in, and once you're in, if you have a few good DPs, you can go far.
Kansas City, the entire narrative about KC all year is going to be why they traded Dwyer in the middle of the season, because to me they look like a team that had the potential to pull upsets in the playoffs, if you call them upsets at all, and go deep, win it all. But they trade their weakness is scoring, and they trade their best scorer. That doesn't make any sense to me to this point. And they've kind of been on the wrong side of momentum for the past month or so. And so, yeah, I think Houston might have enough to get past this, and which is, Houston's been a good story too. We haven't talked a lot about them, but they were not expected to be a playoff team, I don't think, at the start of the year. And here they are, and they have every bit of capability of anyone in the West, because the West is wide open to get through. So yeah, I kind of agree with you. I think Houston might pull this one off, and it's going to be a disappointing end of the season in SKC.
Moving to the conference semifinals, let's move back to the Eastern Conference. Chicago, New York City FC. That's an interesting matchup. I have, your theory that you've been talking about the last few years, that in the playoffs, in no tomorrow situation, no tomorrow scenarios, best players dictate usually the team that wins. And Chicago, NYCFC, even though Chicago has Schweinsteiger and the Golden Boot, Nikolai Nikolic, I think New York City FC with Vila has the best players.
Well, yeah, I obviously in my case I have a different game in my bracket, but yeah, I think that NYCFC probably has the capability of getting past Chicago if that matchup does happen. NYCFC, we have the doubts in our mind based on the way that they played in the playoffs last year. Did Patrick Vieira learn from that? Can they adjust? Can they play a different style? Can they take that next step? Yeah, for sure. They've had a great season, and Villa is a great player. So there's no doubt that NYCFC has the ability to go to the MLS Cup final. They could pull the upset if they have that capabilities. In my case, in my bracket, I have them playing Atlanta, and I would pick Atlanta in that matchup. So I think Atlanta, as I said a minute ago, is probably the second most talented team in the league. So that is my pick there. But nonetheless, here we go.
So we have different matchups here. So I have Atlanta-Toronto, and that's a crazy matchup. But due to the late heroics of a Javinko, we've seen Toronto being able to play solidly in Atlanta. It was a crazy game to watch. Very fun, very entertaining, and very open. And great saves by both keeper. Anyways, Toronto, Atlanta, for me, that matchup, Toronto would find a way in a home and away series to come up on top. So I'm choosing Toronto over Atlanta in my Eastern Conference semifinals bracket.
I believe that Toronto has the capability of beating anyone in a two-game series. I think that TFC, if they are to lose the MLS Cup final, it will be in the MLS Cup final in a one-game, one-off situation. Over 2 games, they have too much firepower and experience, too. That's the other part, too. This is a team that went to the MLS Cup final last year. Let's not forget that. Even though they did lose it in penalties, as we all remember, the experience that they gained from that should see them well through this playoff series. So yes, Atlanta would be a tough matchup for sure, but there was nothing that I saw on Sunday that convinced me that they don't have the ability to get by them. they outplayed them on Sunday. Atlanta has good firepower, as I said. They have talent, but if you think about that in a playoff series scenario, Toronto got 2 away goals, and I think that's ultimately going to be what TFC does in this playoff. So yes, I would pick TFC over anyone at this particular stage.
So your matchup would be TFC New York. You would pick TFC over the Red Bulls.
Yeah, that one for sure.
All right, let's move to the Western Conference semifinals. In my matchup, I have Houston and Portland. This one's quite easy. Portland winning the Western Conference late in their game, late in the season, almost with their last kick of the season. Portland, at least, is a favorite in this one, and I am choosing Portland over Houston.
I have a spoiler alert here. We'll go to the next one in a second, but yes, I in my bracket I have a Cascadia final when it comes to the Western Conference final. Portland probably depends on Addie's health. I think a little bit here. I do favor Seattle a little bit over them, but yes, I do think Portland will be in the Western final.
And my other matchup is Vancouver-Seattle. I do think Vancouver will find a way to upset Seattle just because of the fact that Dempsey will be suspended for Seattle in the first match of that home and away series. So Vancouver, I will give them a slight edge. Maybe it's just will that I'm projecting on Vancouver because I want to have 2 Canadian teams at least in one of each Eastern Conference finals. But I'm choosing Vancouver over Seattle in my second one in my Western Conference semifinal bracket. And that gives me, Duane, a Western Conference final of Portland and Vancouver for me.
So you have a Cascadia final as well, although
yes, but just not the same. I have Portland, Vancouver. You have Portland, Seattle.
Yeah, and I am picking Seattle to make I am picking a repeat of the final, as I said off the top here. And again, it comes down to experience, and I think Seattle has. They haven't had a great season in many ways, and Morris's injury is hurtful for them, and is sort of makes them less dangerous for sure. But I do think that experience will show them through, and I am picking Seattle to make the MLS Cup final. And well, I told you already who I picked to win, so we'll talk about that in a minute. But yes, I think Seattle has enough there.
I'm choosing Portland in this one against Vancouver in my bracket. I think it's Portland's year. I think just the rise of Valeri in the last few he always been hot, but I just think it's that time now. I just think for some reason the way they've played over the last few weeks, when you come in hot, you carry something different with you during the entire playoffs, and I feel Portland will be that team. Yes, they finished first in the Western Conference, but they finished first because of their late season push, and I do feel they'll carry that momentum all the way to the MLS Cup final, which will be, in my opinion, and in yours, in Toronto for a second year in a row. My Eastern Conference final is Toronto NYCFC, and again, your theory, and one that I think is quite true, best players in those moments will dictate, or at least give you a little indication of the possibilities of the results. And Giovinco, Bradley, Altidore, Vasquez, it rivals Vila, but it's the depth of those 4 compared to NYCFC. So for me, Toronto over New York in the Eastern Conference final.
Look, I watched a lot of bad TFC teams for a long time. I can appreciate what I'm looking at right now. This is a great team in every way. And you look at the game against Atlanta, there's a couple key things happen there. Josie, let's talk about Josie for a second. In last year's playoff run, really was a lot about Altidore getting on form, and the way that he played against Atlanta suggested to me that he's on form, and he's angry, and he's over the fact that they didn't make the World Cup, and there was disappointment there for sure, and you could see it in Bradley the way he played in the game against Montreal the Shield Day, but it was different last week to me. That they seemed tuned in, they seemed like they had something to prove. Josie was playing out of his skin again, and then that goal by Giovinco that clinched the points record. That, for him to have that confidence going into the playoffs, I think is key. It would be a major upset if TFC is not at least in the MLS Cup final. Once we get to that single game, anything can happen, as we know, but I think it would be a major upset if they're not in the final again.
And I'm choosing, so my final is Portland, Toronto, and I am choosing for the second year in a row Toronto to lose in the final. I don't know if it's actually my heart or my brain speaking. I don't know. It's hard. Maybe I'll change my tune until that point. But for now, I'm just thinking it never goes according. This is my thinking behind why I think maybe Portland will win against Toronto. It's just it never goes according to plan in finals. There's always something happening. There's always like a controversy, or it never goes fully chalk. So I'm thinking maybe there's something's going to happen, a bad decision, video review or something, and costing maybe Toronto an opportunity. It finishes like something like 1-0 or 2-1 Portland or something, if it gets to that point.
It rarely goes to chalk in MLS. You're right. With the last double win, well, TFC's already obviously won the Voyageurs Cup, so they've won a double already. But the last MLS team to win the Shield and the MLS Cup final was what, like the Galaxy in 2013, I believe.
I don't remember. So it does, might be, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't happen a lot. It's only happened a few times. Columbus did it in 2008 as well. I remember that. But yeah, so there's lots of reason to sort of worry about this if you're a TFC supporter. And TFC supporters, by their nature, are worriers. They look for the negative because they've saw so much negative for so long, and because they're Torontonians and they've seen a lot of bad sports for a long time. Let's not kid ourselves here. The Leafs, the Raptors, the Jays for 20 years. Yeah, it's been a rough run, but I think this team's just too good. They really have any measure, any challenge that has been put in front of them. They've raised up. They've done it. They've taken it, and they've proven time and time again this year that they're up for the task. They broke the all-time points record. Toronto FC broke the all-time points record. That's absurd. I still can't get over that. They are the Supporters' Shield. They won the Canadian Championship. They've jumped over every hurdle that's been put in front of them. So I just think that they're, it goes against my nature, but I can't not pick them. They are the best team by far in my mind this year, and I think that they're going to not only win the MLS Cup final, they're going to win it in a walk. It's going to be like 3-0 at half. I believe this truly, and we'll see. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but that's what I think.
Join our league. Go to MLSsoccer.com, bracket.MLSsoccer.com, and join our league. Soccer Today on SPN. Just look in the description of the podcast, and you'll find the link as well to our league. Until Thursday, in our brand new studio, as always, you can follow Duane at 24th Minute and myself at Kev Laramee. We'll talk to you Thursday with the review of Wednesday night game in the MLS Cup playoffs, and again, any news that happens in the world of football with a soccer perspective. Until then, I'm Kevin Laramee, and have a great soccer.
You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.